Chamei você no telefone muito de casa ao flores. Toda noite, toda noite,
Hello, everyone. So a few days ago, I received a record that I really love, Amore by Fellini, on the Wabop label from 1990, and it's the original pressing. I already had the reissue that I bought when it first came out around 2022 on the Três Selos label. Comes with a beautiful packaging, comes with a booklet, sounds really good, but I just always wanted to get an original. It's not super rare or anything by any means, but it's just the kind of record that sometimes can be a little tricky to find at a reasonable price, or at least what I deem to be a reasonable price for this kind of thing. And but I decided to wait, and it finally got one. And after it arrived, I sort of went back and revisited their discography. Not exactly the whole thing, because I'm still missing a couple of records. But I thought of making just a little quick video, perhaps doing a very brief general presentation of the band for those of you who might not be yet familiar with Fellini. And also sharing like a couple of thoughts about things that I find interesting and compelling in their work. Fellini was a pretty important band in the São Paulo underground and post-punk scene. They formed in the mid '80s, which was their most active period until 1990, when they released Amore, and went into a kind of hiatus. They got back together in the early 2000s. They released an album actually around that time called Amanhã à Tarde, but it was just released on CD. It got a vinyl reissue like 20 years later. And from what I know, they played their last show as a band, really, right before the pandemic hit in Brazil. They played in São Paulo in 2020, just one show or a couple of shows, if I'm not mistaken. But Fellini was one of those bands that had really good critical reception back in a time when the cultural criticism from newspapers and magazines was obviously much stronger, and here in Brazil, and I think that that recognition was totally deserved. They were doing something quite different in that context, but they never found a way into the mainstream. Not that they were interested in something like that, but they were always an independent band. And the lineup during these years, was Thomas Papon on bass, Cadão Volpato on vocals, and he was the main lyricist. Jair Marcos on guitar, and Ricardo Salvani on drums and percussion. Papon and Volpato were like the core of the band. Papon was the guy who was much more connected with this type of music. He was really aware of the stuff that was going on outside Brazil, and especially in the UK. And he was already part of the scene in São Paulo. And Volpato was a more outsider figure, but he was the one outsider to the scene, I mean. But he was someone who was already like very heavy into poetry, modern poetry, contemporary literature, and had a real inclination towards like writing interesting and surprising lyrics, you know. And that combination actually worked really well. And a while ago, I saw an interview with Carol Volpato where he said that what really set Fellini apart at the time was their sense of humor, and also a certain kind of surrealist sensibility that they had. Well, he said that, and he didn't really elaborate much on that, but I don't think that he means the kind of surrealism that we usually associate with the term. You know, the kind that explores like does this deep exploration of dream worlds, or tries to tap the unconscious or the feelings that got buried during like our civilizational process or whatever. Think of the kind of like imagery or iconography, surrealist iconography that you can find in works like Une semaine démontée or La femme sans tête by Max Ernst, you know, and the type of surrealism that deals with the tools of automatic writing or stream of consciousness and so on. It's a more like everyday, more mundane side of surrealism, which is already suggested in the title of Amore, you know, which is a clear reference, of course, to the André Breton novel, L'Amour Fou. And it's not a speculation on my part. This reference is actually documented. And it's a side of surrealism that it is like already present in other like early novels by André Breton, like Nadja, for instance. And I would say that this very important side of surrealism is has like two core tenets. First, a sort of defense of some kind of porosity between art and life, and the other one is like a real passion for wandering, for like drifting at random, for being open to the encounters that chance brings. You know, it's basically a taste for living in that state of transit and surrender to chance, really. For instance, Nadja starts with Breton stating that literary criticism would gain a lot if, beyond the traditional tools of the trade, it also explored certain small, banal, but revealing anecdotes, like little flashes of the creative minds of artists. And he also says that artists themselves should and could provide for that kind of material for a deeper understanding of their of their work. Then the actual narrative unfolds as a series of small scenes where the narrator walks randomly through the city in question being Paris. He meets a series of figures, lists a bunch of coincidences. That is totally the sort of a lyrical universe of Fellini songs. The speaker is always out on night walks or observing urban scenes in unusual ways, putting disparate elements side by side, sometimes letting a certain boredom or ennui show through, but always with a touch of humor, So it's clearly a speaker who's part of the tradition of the flaneur, that archetypal figure of European modernism that you can find it from Baudelaire's poems to all the way to Walter Benjamin's essays, and it is a kind of paradoxical figure. He's 100% a product of its time, a lover of the city and of urban life, but always a little out of step, because he seems to be and to inhabit really a different kind of temporality, which is more removed, more contemplative. But the flaneur, in the case of Fellini, of course, isn't wandering through 19th century Paris. He's walking through São Paulo in the second half of the 20th century. He lives in the Americas, where, as he sings in the song Rock Europeu, one can only live in a madhouse, and proceeds to ask if living in a madhouse is better than living in a slum anyways. Since I mentioned that song, I'll start talking about the records proper. And the album that has the track Rock Europeu, it's the first one, O Adeus de Fellini, which is kind of funny since it's their debut record, and it's titled something like the Fellini's Farewell. And I would say that this is the record that sounds the most like a standard post-punk band. So, in a sense, it can feel a little bit derivative or very much under the influence of their sources. At the time, there are a lot of Peter Hook style bass lines or Bernard Sumner-ish guitar parts, and even Cada Volpato's writing in terms of the lyrics still seems to be searching for the right tone, still feeling its way, Later on, Cadão's lyrics would become much more precise, much more elusive, without so much concern about transmitting a message or commenting on big issues, which in a way actually gives this album a certain charm, because even though it's definitely the Fellini record that I listen to the least, it has some songs that are favorites among fans, Funziona senza vapore or Rock Europeu, which I already mentioned. But it still clearly feels like a very early stage in the development of their aesthetic, which is natural, of course, considering that this is their first LP. And so to make it short, I think it's a fun album with its own charm, even if it's the one that with the least of the kind of aesthetic mix and the lyrical precision that they would show from the second album onwards. There are interesting things in it, certain DIY charm, and there's something that I find actually pretty curious that appears on all of their records, but here it shows up in a more shocking, most direct way, which is this. These are fun records, as I said, with a very quirky sense of humor in the lyrics, a certain like, and also in certain instrumental passages, which are really fun. Uh, in the way that Cadê Pato sings at times, And as I said, the speaker often is, it refers back to this sort of flaneur figure. It's contemplative, melancholic, a bit removed from the ordinary rhythm of things. But there's like always a moment in Fellini's records that reviews that it's not just giggles and contemplation and wondering. There's a reminder of attention to what's happening in the world. And on this album, I think it's the most serious reminder because it appears here on the song that closes the album, which it's called Zaun. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's in German, but I saw that it means something like fences. It's not really like the last track. The actual last track is a live version of another song from the album, but in terms of the overall cohesion of the thing, it is the last track. So it's a song in German, sung by Thomas Papel, and when it seems like it's ending, it comes back for a few seconds with a very ominous chant of Sieg Heil, which is not like the dark side of Fellini, of course, because they're not fucking Nazis. But I would say that it's kind of the intrusion of the dark side of the world into this kind of poetic approach. And it seems to serve this function, to say that there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of fun and goofing, but the world is no joke. The critical attention to what's going on or to certain like historical events appears later in a much more discreet way, and I'd say more effective because of that. Like, for example, in the song Tabu from Fellini Só Vive Duas Vezes, their follow-up record, which the song Tabu starts with the lines terremoto destruiu o México essa manhã. Eu fui promovido, which translates to something like an earthquake destroyed Mexico this morning. I got promoted, which is structured in a very similar. This is probably was Cada Patos source anyway. To the famous entry in Kafka's diaries from 1914, which read, "Germany has declared war on Russia, swimming in the afternoon." And on Amor Louco, this attention is signaled in the credits, recording credits, that reads 1989, fim do Muro de Berlim. 1989, the end, not the fall, the end of the Berlin Wall. But anyways, this is where things start getting really good, in my opinion. This is when Cadê Pato's writing loosens up and he finds a certain economy of words and a finer tuning for the syntheses and images he creates. The sound becomes like 100% fun and unique. This is where the synthesizers and the samba come in. It's in a minimalist, mechanical samba, with electronic drums, but a precarious kind of mechanical, lo-fi production kind. So it's not a soulless machine sound, so to speak. Their third album I actually don't have here. It's called Três Lugares Diferentes. It's not a rare record or anything. I just don't have it. And since I haven't listened to it recently, it's not fresh in my memory, so I won't comment on it or anything. And I'll go straight to Amore Louco. And here, Fellini changes labels, from Baratos e Afins, which is also like a very traditional record store in São Paulo, to Wop Pop label. And this is it's like the most well-polished, well-produced Fellini album. It sounds cleaner with more like apparent care in the execution and in this instrumentation. It's much more based on the acoustic guitar, clean vocal, with not too much effect. Well, my microphone died on me, so let's see if I remember what I was saying. But I was saying that here in Amore Louco, that flaneur, somewhat romantic side, romantic not in the philosophical sense, it appears in a really beautiful way, and I think that the music conveys it. It's a nocturnal kind of music. It's a music for night wanderings, and it's something that really invites a certain type of intertextuality. For me, it's really difficult to talk about Fellini, to describe their world without making a series of associations that the work invites you to make. There's something like every time I listen to Amore Louco, for instance, I think of certain films, not Federico Fellini films, but stuff like They Live by Night by Nicholas Ray, or O Sangue by Portuguese director Pedro Costa, which has beautiful night scenes in Lisbon, or White Nights by Luchino Visconti, Boy Meets Girl by Leo Carrax. That kind of imagery, that nocturnal atmosphere, and that intimate disposition that leads the characters of these films, who are always a little bit tragic, but very interesting characters, smart, but somewhat betraying a certain good-natured naivete, That's the universe Fellini's music takes me to.
Cidade perdida, joga as cascas pra lá. Só eu e você e o louco. Cidade proibida, fácil vem, fácil vai. Só eu e você e o louco.
And last but not least, as a bonus, I have this, A Melhor Coisa Que Eu Fiz, which is a great compilation of demos and songs that were left out of previous records, plus some live material. So, and there's some really interesting things here, including a version of the opening track of Amore Louco, Chico Buarque song, which sounds really, really good. And I really love this. This was released on the Nada Nada label. It's a label that has put out lots of cool stuff from the punk and post-punk scenes from São Paulo. And well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed and see you soon. We'll try to post another video maybe tomorrow or Saturday with the stuff that other stuff that I've been enjoying this week. Bye.